Hey everyone! It's time for another story. Before we begin, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell so you won't miss any updates, and leave a comment telling me which manhwas you'd like to see here. Let's go and enjoy the story. Shinshur was deeply disappointed when he transmigrated into the book he wrote and didn't even end up as the protagonist. He also couldn't understand why the invincible hero had become a girl. Even worse, why did all of his disciples want to become his wife? The protagonist asked him, "Master, do you want to take me now? Or should I kill the other disciples first so you'll accept me?" This story is incredibly creative and fun, blending humor and unexpected twists. The role reversal and the author's shock with his own plot create a captivating dynamic. Moreover, the irreverent tone and eccentric characters make the plot even more engaging. The story starts with the protagonist thinking he's asleep and wondering what time it is. He says they should be sending today's update, and while searching for the mouse and keyboard, he realizes he's touching something soft. Then, someone calls him Master and asks him to stop and not to play with that. Realizing he's not in his real life, the protagonist finds Song Yuling kneeling right in front of him. Wondering if he's dreaming and saying the dream feels so perfect, he continues touching Song Yu. While asking him to stop touching her, she knows that if she runs away now, she'll make the protagonist angry, and will probably be beaten to death. You know, just the usual casual threat to life. Soon, the protagonist realizes this is not a dream. He says it feels too real and wonders how a dream could be so vivid. Looking at Song Yuling, he asks if it's really her, and then suddenly says his head hurts a lot. Worried, Yuling asks what's wrong and begs him not to scare her. She knows that if he dies there, in that place, the sect people will suspect her, and at that point, the elders and senior brothers will definitely torture her. Placing his hand on her face, the protagonist tells Yuling that he's fine, and that she doesn't need to worry. Then he asks her to stop crying. Still crying, she says the protagonist can't die, otherwise she'll be in serious trouble. Frustrated by her crying, the protagonist asks why she's still crying, and if she wants him to do something about her. Frightened, Yuling says that's enough and says that since he's okay, then he should just stay that way. Holding his head, the protagonist says that clearly he would have made Yuling into a cute character and wonders if her personality is different from how he originally said it. Then the protagonist realizes he has traveled into the story of Long Outyan, a novel written by himself. As Shinshur, a cultivator at the Golden Core stage, he is the second master of Shangning Shinzong. He's a cruel character who does whatever it takes to become stronger. In the plot, he covets the treasures and opportunities of the protagonist. Greedy, you could say. From the beginning, he tricks and intimidates the protagonist, even trying to kill him. Later, the protagonist reaches Jin Dan, and the first thing he does is defeat Shinshur, who had completed his golden elixir. He says Shinshur was completely useless, and his life was no better than his death. Then he says the protagonist is extremely lucky, and the whole process is just full of cliché routines. So the protagonist screams the most important thing, claiming that he was the first cannon fodder boss sacrificed to the heavens by the story's protagonist. He questions if it's just because he likes to give the villains the same name as himself. If he had known this, he would have made himself the protagonist's friend or a golden-fingered master. After remembering the golden fingers, the protagonist recalls that according to the setup, there should be some system or cheat for a transmigrator like him. Then, he calls for the supervillain system to appear, but with no success. While watching the protagonist trying to do something, Yuling becomes confused by his movements. Yeah, it was way too weird. He realizes that's not the right command, so he starts saying several random names, but none of them work. Desperate, the protagonist says the system is doing this to him because he's not the author of the system genre. Then he lies down on the bed and wonders if he might die right after arriving. Soon, Yuling lies down next to the protagonist as well. Looking at her, the protagonist says that this Song Yuling is his youngest disciple. Until the story's protagonist arrives, she starts to worship him. But according to the timeline, the story's protagonist hasn't even met Shangning Shinzong yet, or become the protagonist's disciple. And he hasn't even taken revenge on him yet. Then he thinks that the story's protagonist is really lucky, and extremely short-sighted. While Shinshur maximizes favorability with the big guy and becomes his #1 dog, wouldn't he be able to follow the story's protagonist and reach the top? Looking and judging by Yuling's cuteness, Shinshur thinks there must be several beauties in that world. And if he thinks about it that way, life seems quite promising in that place. Either way, Shinshur wants to try to change his bad reputation of being violent and inherently cruel. After squeezing Yuling's cheek, she asked Shinshur how he could do that, and claimed she's still very young. Knowing he didn't do anything, Shinshur remembers that this is a dirty game. And according to the character settings, he always abuses them. And he wonders if it'd be okay to do something here now. It's always good to ask that. Shinshur says that attitude isn't for him. It's for the readers. Then, he places his hands on a certain part of Yuling and tells her to stop playing and shut up. She quickly obeys Shinshur and goes silent. Then, he thinks about how he could bother that stupid girl and claims he'll slowly change his reputation. He says he has to build a good relationship with the other disciples first, and they all don't care about the story's protagonist. Then Xuanyu tells Shinshur that he has something to report. Outside, that red-haired girl realizes it's been a long time since Yuling went in to give Shinshur his spiritual tea. And she says she shouldn't be so clumsy to annoy him. Going to answer the door, Shinshur knows that his second disciple, according to his settings, is the sentimental and soft-hearted sister Ming Tian, but unfortunately, her qualifications are mediocre. And in the original plot, she was beaten to death by him after defending the story's protagonist. And that also became the trigger for the story's protagonist's revenge against Shinshur. And of course, Shinshur wouldn't do something so stupid now. And the most important thing at this moment is that card J that contains precious inscriptions on all sides. But first, he uses the cheating eye to see what she looks like. Then Shinshur asks Ming Tian why she's looking for him. Outside, kneeling, Ming Tian stays silent at Shin's question. Completely speechless. Seeing Ming Tian kneeling, Shinshur says that's a very unique way to show up. From up close, no one can check anyone. Then he asks Ming Tian to stand up. After standing, Ming Tian says that Xing Jintang sent him an invitation. Seeing that Yuling is okay, Ming Tian feels relieved to see her. After hearing that name, Shinshur thinks he was really right, and that's the administrative department of Shangding Xinzong. Then he asks to see the invitation Ming was given. Nervous, Ming Tian recaps, and says that the invitation hasn't been sent yet. Relieved, Ming Tian thinks about how she was so worried about her sister that she ended up lying to Shinshur. And for a disciple with extremely low talent like her, Shinshur could kill her out of anger. Shinshur knows Ming lied about the invitation to protect her sister, and wonders why his disciples are so stupid. That classic affection. Wanting to give Ming a break, Shinshur says she can take Yuling back and he'll spare her just this once. And he says she doesn't need to bow and worship him anymore in the future. Now she can just greet him normally from today on. Confused, Ming Tian asks what he means by that. Shinshur says it's nothing, and says just looking at her back and talking to her makes him irritated, and tells her to behave. Then he thinks it's so difficult, Shinshur's original character is so villainous, and claims it'll be a lot of work to make those little disciples trust him. So, he decides to go back and take on the responsibility of a master and guide them in their cultivation. Looking at Shinshur, Ming is surprised by Yuling asking why she's blushing, and questions if she's thinking Shinshur is really handsome. Ming replies to Ling asking what nonsense Ling is talking about, and questions how she could make such hasty comments. Going to the nearby peak, Shinshur's exclusive cave, among the 12 mountain peaks of Shangding Xianzong, the spiritual concentration power here is only surpassed by the main Ding Tian Peak and the secondary Danqing Peak. On this peak, there are two fields. One contains a garden of Edelweiss, and the other is a white jade nursery. Edelweiss has the ability to gather qi and the materials necessary for cultivation, while the white jade nursery is a precious place for cultivation breakthroughs. Those two treasures are Shinshur's private property, and along with his cultivation at the pinnacle of the Golden Core, even though the other peak masters might be envious, they don't dare make a move. What if something worse happens? Curious, Shinshur climbs the peak, claiming there is a mutated Edelweiss in his garden. He states that this is the protagonist's first opportunity, and since no one has found it yet, Shinshur needs to grab it first to avoid other problems. Calmly, Shinshur knows that this plot was written entirely by him, so what else could happen? As he's about to claim that he's worrying too much, Shinshur reaches the top and finds those birds finishing off his valuable medicinal garden. Curious, Shinshur asks what those birds are doing, and they try to fly away. He says that those birds are digging their own graves and questions why they want to run after they're done. Soon, Shinshur says that he wants to see how far they'll go. He then uses his descend from the mountain ability on the birds and prevents them from flying away. Now that's something. Saddened, Shinshur tells them not to use their golden opportunity for afternoon tea and says those stupid birds have no vision. He then questions how his disciples are taking care of his house. Furious, Shinshur grabs his token and calls everyone to go to the Edelweiss garden. Seeing his disciples taking too long to reach the top of the peak, Shinshur realizes how poor their physiques are and claims that he'll have to make them run and train tomorrow morning. Sometime later, his disciples arrive at the garden. Trying to speak but exhausted, they are interrupted by Shinshur, who says they can talk after they catch their breath. He then asks them all to stand up. Shinshur notices that Han Xianpi has also arrived, accompanied by the other disciples. Shinshur knows that Han Xianpi is of average to superior talent, the only one with the best aptitude among the four, with spiritual roots of fire and wood. But her constitution is different from regular people. Shinshur didn't expect to see this kind of taste in reality. Originally, she was meant to be used as a tool to highlight Shinshur's brutality. He hadn't taught her any exercises. However, she didn't complain much, as she was conscious and handled the tasks in an orderly manner. Disciplined, in this case. Then Shinshur says those stupid birds went there and stole his valuable medicinal garden. He asks who's responsible for guarding that place. Seeing he gets no answer, Shinshur knows he's a cruel and rude person, but those disciples have a good relationship with each other and always protect one another. Furious, Shinshur asks if they won't speak. But then he realizes that the one in charge of that place is his eldest disciple, Yueli. Shinshur then understands and thinks that his disciple Dong Yueli should have been responsible for guarding the medicinal garden, but she was injured after being punished by him. So, he could only blame himself instead of blaming his disciples. Then Ming Tian kneels and begs Shinshur to stop his anger. Please. She asks him to forgive Dong Yueli. Trying to relieve Dong's burden, Ming Tian says that she had asked to take care of the medicinal garden, so the fault is hers. And the one who should be punished is her, not Dong. Furious, Shinshur screams for Ming Tian to shut up and claims that she's too noisy. Then he asks if Ming Tian is trying to tell him what he should or shouldn't do. Terrified, Ming Tian says she would never dare do such a thing. Shinshur tells them to get out of his sight and do what they need to do. He asks them not to test his patience again. Even though Shinshur won't punish them, he still has to act arrogantly. Noticing that his disciples really left, Shinshur wonders if he's really that terrifying. Just to be sure. Urbai Peak is divided into 3 areas. The first area is where the outer disciples and servants live. The second area is where the inner disciples live. And, naturally, the third area is the residence of Shinshur, of those in the Golden Core realm and immortals. In the second area, there is a spiritual gathering array, which makes the spiritual power twice as dense as outside. So Shinshur wonders why Song Yuling and the others chose to stay in the first area instead of doing their best to reach the second area? Isn't it because they're afraid of being too close to Shinshur and ending up dead? He imagines how hurt Yueli is. Shinshur only vaguely mentioned that in the novel, so he hopes it's not that serious. When he opens the door, Shinshur finds Dong Yueli taking a bath. Startled, Dong apologizes and says she didn't know he was coming there. And she pleads for him to please wait until she gets out of the bathtub. Quickly, Shinshur closes the door and thinks he has no regrets in this life. What is happiness? Happiness is when the cat eats fish, when the dog eats meat, and when Shinshur opens the door and sees a beauty taking a bath. However, the scars on Dong Yueli's body were worrying. He knows that Dong was Shinshur's first disciple, so she was the one who suffered the most abuse. She is also at the 9th stage of the Qi refining realm, which is the highest among all 4 disciples. But she was also the only one who chose to stay with Shinshur when he was betrayed by the others. Pure loyalty. Still in the bathtub, Dong Yueli knows that her master saw her naked, and she wonders what she should do now. She questions whether he's going to turn into a beast and do something bad to her now. Realizing the silence has taken over the room, she wonders if Shinshur has left. While peeking, Dong is surprised by Shinshur again, who says he's back. Noticing that her master is not being too direct, Dong thinks this is all very strange. Then, he asks Dong to open her mouth. With no choice, Dong Yueli opens her mouth, but immediately says to her master that she's his disciple. Knowing her current condition, Dong knows she could really die if she gets punished by her master again. Then Shinshur gives her a pill, and says it's a priceless level 4 elixir, of which he only has around 10. Then Shinshur tells Dong not to waste the elixir, and to quickly absorb its power. As she focuses on absorbing the elixir's power, Shinshur looks at her and thinks that after ingesting something so valuable, Dong Yueli should be able to advance easily to the Foundation realm. At least according to logic. Outside, while trying to peek, Ming Tian tells Yu Ling not to make noise. And says they're done for if they get caught by Shinshur. Then Ling says the coast is clear. And tells Ming to relax. And claims that the master cultivates at night, so he won't notice if they enter the second area. Then Ming Tian says it's always good to be careful. This time, it was thanks to the help of Xian'er, who can't cultivate, that they were able to buy excellent healing pills. So, they should safely deliver them to Dong Yueli. Then Ming Tian knocks on the door and asks Dong Yueli to open it, saying they are there to deliver her medicine. Yu Ling questions if Dong had already fallen asleep. Worried, Ming thinks she might have passed out right after being punished by Shinshur. Without hesitation, Yu Ling opens the door and says that since the situation is so critical, they should break the door down. Then Ming Tian tells Yu Ling to look at that, and points out that Dong Yueli is ascending to the Foundation realm. Then Ding points out that Dong Yueli's wounds had disappeared. In awe, Yu Ling points out that Dong Yueli's breasts are greater by peaks. Then, they are surprised by Shinshur asking what the two of them are doing there in the middle of the night. You won't believe it. Scared, Ming Tian says they are there to see their sister Dong Yueli. Seeing that they are there to deliver medicine to Dong Yueli. Although those disciples aren't good at cultivation, they are kind people. Then Shinshur says that Dong Yueli is, at that moment, in the middle of a breakthrough, and asks them not to disturb her, and to leave immediately. With doubts, Yu Ling tells Ming Tian that Shinshur has become gentler, and questions whether he is still the same master they know. Unsure, Ming Tian says she doesn't know anything either. Although, at first, Shinshur only wanted to change the direction of the plot, now he genuinely likes those disciples. And it seems like he has to be a good master now. At the top of her by peak, while meditating, Shinshur knows that according to the story, he has dual spiritual roots of water and wood, is skilled in illusion arts, trap techniques, and healing methods. His most powerful ability is a spiritual art called Overlapping Mountains. And if we follow Long Out-Yin's ranking of techniques, there are spiritual arts, profound arts, and immortal arts, with spiritual arts being the weakest. Even if cultivated to perfection, whoever masters them still won't be that powerful. So, the young man now in Shinshur's body knows that he is at the peak of the Golden Core realm, and just one step away from the nascent soul realm. There's also the possibility that he might go beyond that. After all, according to the story, in the Qingzhou region, Shinshur is already quite powerful if he's in the nascent soul realm. At his current realm, he's at the perfect difficulty level to be the protagonist's first boss. To have that cool duel to watch. After trying to use his power on a small wooden chair and succeeding, Shinshur finds that sensation amazing. And now that he's decided to be a good master, he must not neglect his cultivation. Going outside, Shinshur wonders what's really going on there. He claims it might be because the rules of that world were created by him. How did he advance so easily to the nascent soul realm? Feeling that energy, he says the world is responding to him, favoring him. And it seems like the world is putting his will first. He thinks that not only will there be no obstacles to increasing his realm, but the balance of power will tilt in his favor when facing an enemy. In other words, his enemy's attacks will be weakened, while his own will be strengthened. Happy, Shinshur jumps and says it's amazing. And says that's how the heavens are helping him. He says he doesn't care about the consequences. He must be able to reach the divinity realm too. Keeping the determination, of course. But he knows that, for now, it's better to follow the script. And he should suppress his cultivation at the Golden Core realm for the time being. Then Shinshur thinks that God is really helping him. And with a constitution like that, even if the protagonist is equipped with various hacks and his cultivation advances rapidly, Shinshur will always be able to defeat him in terms of realm and strength. Finding that idea incredible, Shinshur claims that it means he can always be the protagonist's master and stick to him. The next day, after waking up, Yu Ling greets her sisters and fellow disciples with a good morning. Then Ming Tian asks if Yu Ling didn't sleep well that night. She says that last night, she heard her master's creepy laughter coming from the top of the peak and got too scared to sleep. Ming quickly tells her to wash up because the master asked for them to gather at the White Jade Nursery at the top of the peak. After Yu's quick bath, Ming calls them to hurry and says that Shinshur is waiting for them. At the top of the peak, Shinshur says he's been sitting there for so long he's starting to get sleepy. Then, he's surprised by Dong Yueli calling out to him, saying that the disciples have arrived. Looking at Dong, Shinshur realizes that she easily advanced to the Foundation realm last night. and claims that the next ones will be his other disciples. Quickly, Shinshur says that from that day forward, he wants them there every morning, and tells them to wake up early and cultivate there for 1 hour. Understood? Then Shin says they'll start right now. The earlier the better. Siener tells Shinshur that she thinks it's better if she just does manual labor and says that if she stays there, she'll just end up getting in her sister's way. And says she doesn't have a cultivation method yet, so. Thinking to herself, Siener says she's a useless one who can't even cultivate, and maybe she'll just remain a laborer until she dies of old age, without ever being able to save her mother. Shinshur then asks Siener's age. He knows it's true. And previously, Shinshur didn't teach her any cultivation method, as he feared that her unknown past could complicate things, but now he has nothing to fear. Siener quickly answers, saying that she's only 14 years old. He responds by saying that 14 isn't that young, and explains that the ideal age to start cultivating is between 9 and 12. At 14, the meridians in the body are already about to take shape, so even if she starts cultivating now. Gently placing his hand on Siener's head to calm her down, Shinshur says it's all right, and claims that it's still not too late. He tells her that she has dual spiritual roots of fire and wood, and since she hasn't joined any sect before, he will teach her the cultivation methods of his own sect. As long as she works hard, it won't be too late. He tells Siener that nothing is impossible. While crying, Siener says that it's true, Shinshur is her master. The one who, for years ago, at the top of the glorious immortal hall, despite the ridicule and scorn of others, took her hand and made her his disciple. She then hugs Shinshur while crying, and he tells her it's okay and asks her not to cry so much. Such a cute moment. Yu Ling and Ding Tian wonder if that's really their master and ask when he became such a kind person. Dong Yueli knows that Shinshur used to be a very kind man, and now he's finally returned to his true self. Claiming that she's tired, Yu Ling says she has to wake up early every morning, climb to the top of the peak to train, and then return. Soon after, she complains about pain in her feet. While pouring water over her body, Ding Tian says that their master is doing it for their own good, so she asks Yu Ling not to complain. If you stay quiet, it goes away. Soon after, Siener says she's going down the peak to deliver those vegetables. But quickly, Yu Ling hugs her from behind, grabbing her breasts, and asks if the master has been very strict with her lately. Startled, Siener asks Yu Ling to let go and says that the master not only spent his time and energy to teach her cultivation, but also allowed her to practice in his white jade nursery, since she has dual spiritual roots of fire and wood. And because he's treating her this way, she has to work hard not to disappoint him. Then, Siener continues on her way down the peak with the vegetables. Quickly, Yu Ling asks Ming Tian if she also thinks the master now is the same kind person as before, just like Dong Yueli said. Ming Tian replies that she doesn't know, and says that originally, they were all rejected by the sect. Siener was rejected because of her status, Ding Tian was rejected due to her inferior spirituality, and she, Yu Ling, was rejected for being an idiot. Angry, Yu Ling says that's not true and claims that she's smart. Ding Tian then says that the master was willing to accept them as his disciples. While heading down the peak, Siener runs into a group of people. As they approach, she quickly asks who they are and questions if they have a token. Xiao Huangming then asks if she forgot him so quickly. Recognizing Xiao, she asks what brings him there this time. She recalls that he had recently gone to collect Edelweiss. At least her memory's good. Xiao Huangming says that this time he's not there to collect Edelweiss. In fact, they recently lost 7 medicinal cranes from their peak, so Siener's master, Shinshur, sent them out to look for them on the other peaks. Shocked upon hearing medicinal cranes, Siener reacts. Zhao then says those medicinal cranes are extremely valuable. Their blood and feathers are precious treasures. He claims they are the most important things to their peak. He then asks Siener if she's seen any. She says she hasn't seen any, but inside, she knows she has. She even cooked one for them to eat. Quickly, Siener tells Zhao that if he doesn't have a token, she recommends that he go back and get one first. She says her master has a bad temper, and if Zhao dares to climb the peak without a token, she fears Shinshur will blame her and her sisters. Zhao questions why Siener is being so harsh with him and his group, saying that they just want to take a look. Then Siener apologizes, and says she can't let them climb the peak without a token. Getting angry, Zhao asks if she thinks she's someone important just because he called her junior sister? He asks if she even knows how to cultivate, How dare she act like she's above him? He says that Sienna really deserves to die. Bold move right there. As he's about to attack her, one of the women in Zhao's group asks him not to be so impulsive and reminds him that the master of that peak is Shinshur. Zhao knows that Shinshur doesn't care about his disciples. He usually beats them nearly to death, and this Han Sienna hasn't even received a cultivation method. Even if she dies, Shinshur wouldn't go against the Baha'i peak for that piece of trash. Suddenly, Sienna defends Zhao's strike with some kind of invisible barrier, leaving him completely stunned that she managed to block his attack. She then asks if Zhao really wants to fight their honor by peak. Not understanding what's happening, Zhao says that he's already reached the third stage of the Qi refinement realm. Even though he held back, Sienna shouldn't have been able to block that attack, since she doesn't even have a cultivation method. Enraged, Zhao charges at Sienna again, and says that her master didn't even teach her how to cultivate, yet she has such strength? He then accuses her of stealing from Shinshur, and says that it's up to him to teach her a lesson in Shinshur's place. Sienna knows she's just a beginner, and no match for Zhao. But if she dies there, she won't allow him to trample on her master's honor. Such dishonor shall not pass. Suddenly, Shinshur appears and asks, is it up to Zhao to teach a lesson to his disciple? He instantly defends Sienna from Zhao's second strike. Embracing Sienna, Shinshur says she did a great job. After Shinshur shows up, the men who were with Zhao beg Shinshur to spare their lives. Shinshur says that they are juniors, and he won't make things difficult for them. He tells them to leave, and if anything else comes up, they can tell their master to come find him. Worried, Shinshur asks Sienna if she's hurt. She quickly answers that she's not and asks why the group was even there. Sienna says that Shinshur didn't know what was going on, but even so, he still took down the group? Shinshur then points to those birds and says that Sienna had told him they were living in that place where the peach blossoms bloom for many days, and this month, she managed everything alone. Looking at those birds, Shinshur asks when they will mate and give him a few clutches of eggs to drink. He claims he's counting on those birds to produce some little ones, so he can get rich. What a shameful motivation. Finding it strange, Shinshur thinks that he clearly ate one crane, leaving exactly 3 males and 3 females, and wonders why they haven't bred yet. Then, he says whatever. He asks Dong Yueli if her cultivation in the Foundation realm is stable now, right? Dong answers yes and thanks Shinshur for the medicinal pill, saying it was thanks to it that she was able to advance and stabilize her cultivation. Shinshur says that now that the stabilization of the Foundation realm is over, Dong can begin learning techniques. He mentions that Dong already has a mutated ice spiritual root, and the attributes of that root are similar to those of the water spiritual root. So Shinshur hands Dong a book and says that it contains a water spiritual art that she should start practicing. If she doesn't understand something, she's welcome to ask Shinshur anything. Holding herself back, Dong says she will practice and won't disappoint her master. Soon after, she wonders why her master is taking so long, and says it's been so long since he last punished her, she can't take it anymore. Kinda weird, but okay. Then the protagonist explains to his disciples that, as the name suggests, the Immortal Seedling Conference is a selection event where mortal sects choose young people from the new generation who are suitable for immortal cultivation. Although the Shanding Immortal sect is a lesser-known sect, it's considered a rising force, so naturally, it behaves formally. The Yuhua sect and Dongming Pavilion, which are allies of the Shanding Immortal sect, also came to observe the event. The qualifications of newly recruited disciples often affect the rise and fall of a sect decades, or even hundreds of years later, so they should pay attention to this election. Dong Yueli tells Shinshur that the way he's sitting completely ruins his image. Watching Shinshur from a distance, Luo says that's the Shinshur from the Shanding Immortal sect, and comments that he's an interesting person. Then a pink-haired girl asks Luo if she's interested in him. Luo says that if he doesn't have a shady past, she might consider it. Noticing that Luo is looking at him, Shinshur looks back at her, and she suddenly opens her blouse and shows him one of her breasts, leaving everyone around stunned by the scene. After seeing that, Shinshur starts bleeding from his nose, and Ding Tian quickly alerts him that he's bleeding. As he wipes the blood, the master says everything's fine, and claims he's just been eating too much lately. Then Yuling tells Shinshur that the woman he just saw was really amazing, leaving Shinshur confused and asking why. Yuling says her herbal peaks are even more amazing than first sisters and second sisters. Wiping his forehead, Shinshur says that unfortunately, too many people these days are superficial, and claims the world is getting worse. He wonders if she's any different. But according to the story, the protagonist, Xiaoqi, is finally going to make his debut here, and he'll stand out in the final test. At least theoretically. From above, a senior man says he didn't expect such a good seedling to appear at this year's conference. Then the master of Danqing Peak says that the iron chain bridge measures the spiritual power affinity of spiritual roots, but that child was not only unaffected by the chains, on the contrary, they seem to help him. He says he's never seen such affinity before, claiming the child's future is limitless. One of the elders says this is a blessing for their Shanding immortal sect. Another elder says that, in his opinion, such a talented seedling should be directly under the patriarch's guidance, so they can receive the best training possible. That senior man tells the elders to calm down, and says they'll take a look at the attributes of the child's spiritual root. Although he'd really like to take the child as his disciple, he also needs to know the compatibility of the spiritual root. He says maybe one of the other elders, or peak masters, is more suitable to guide him, which wouldn't be too hard. Lying down, relaxed, and listening to the conversation, Shinshur thinks that they can have their fun for now, but let's see if they'll actually get those great disciples later. That senior man knows they're all good, but the Shanding immortal sect owes Shinshur. He says that all of Shinshur's disciples were chosen during the Immortal Seedling Conference, but none of the peak masters wanted them. According to the rules, all children who pass every stage and reach the cloud platform become disciples of the Shanding immortal sect. However, there were some unusual disciples, and the elders and peak masters were unwilling to accept them. In the end, it was Shinshur who accepted them, and helped the Shanding immortal sect avoid that disgrace. While watching the tournament, Patriarch Ning Shiming thinks that if there are other good seedlings, he'll say something to help Shinshur take one or two of them. Then he congratulates the children who passed the test. He says that those who are now standing on the cloud platform are disciples of his Shanding immortal sect. After testing their spiritual roots, they'll be assigned to an appropriate master to guide them on the path of immortal cultivation. For now, Ning says the people he calls should step forward and walk to the formation in the center of the stage, just to move things along. The first child steps forward, and Ning says she has triple spiritual roots: water, wood, and earth. He asks if she would be willing to join Danqing Peak. That child quickly accepts Ning's offer. While feeding Shinshur, Dongyueli tells him that if he keeps spacing out like that, all the disciples with good qualifications will be snatched up by the other elders and peak masters. Shinshur asks what's so great about that. He says he doesn't want to take in any more disciples, and asks if he doesn't already have enough trouble with the ones he has. Yuling quickly says she knows, and claims there are rumors in this sect that the master is a clown who only accepts useless disciples. Shinshur realizes that's not a compliment, and asks why Yuling is saying it so cheerfully. Then, after a child with a pure wood spiritual root appears, Shinshur says that Wei Qin is the first one to join the protagonist Xiaoqi's harem. He says that little glutton was won over by the protagonist using a food-based strategy. A good strategy, to be honest. Then Ning asks Shinshur if he'd like to take the child with a pure wood spiritual root for himself. Ning thinks, who would have thought there'd be another good seedling besides Xiaoqi? And it's a pure wood root, so why not give her to Shinshur? He figures that would be enough to settle things with him. Furious, the other elders wonder how such an exceptional seedling could be handed to a guy like Shinshur. Shinshur says he's not interested. He thinks it would be better to leave the child with Taoist Bai from Lingzhu Peak. Bai Ran has a technique called Bambi Jade, and Wei Qin's attributes are quite compatible with it. According to the story, she's supposed to become her disciple. Bai Ran quickly responds that it's absolutely impossible. She says Shinshur's strength is much greater than hers, and a seedling that talented can't be wasted in her hands. Then Ning says Bai Ran's cultivation is still shallow. He says she's only at the early stages of the Golden Core realm. And since Wei Qin's talent is exceptional, whoever takes her as a disciple should be chosen carefully. Knowing that she's not strong enough and doesn't have high status in the sect, Bai Ran thinks it's not her time to have such a talented disciple. So much talent could go to waste. Furious, Shinshur asks what's with all that nonsense. He says that if they want to take Wei Qin, go ahead. But he wants to see if whoever takes her can teach her well. And says that if he's saying Bai Ran is more suitable than him, then she is more suitable than him. And who approves or opposes his idea of Wei Qin becoming Bai Ran's disciple? Leaving Ning completely furious. Soon, Shinshur calls Wei Qin and asks if she's hungry, right? Then he gives her a snack to eat and enjoy. After eating the cookie that Shinshur gave her, He tells Wei Qin that since she ate the cookie he gave her, she can't join Xiaoqi to kill him, leaving Wei Qin confused by what he just said. Then, Bai Ren thanks Shinshi for his trust. He says it was nothing, and that she is the most suitable master for Wei Qin. He claims he only spoke the truth. Knowing the moment of the show had finally arrived, Ning calls the next child, who turns out to be Xiaoqi, the protagonist of the story. Those elders talk among themselves and say that Xiaoqi is the last one left to take the test, and say they don't know what kind of spiritual root he has, but if he has a water root, wouldn't he have no chance of becoming their disciple? Then, one of the elders says that he's lived for over 100 years and asks if he has ever been that lucky in his life, and says he thinks the patriarch will accept him as a personal disciple, so he should save his breath, which isn't wrong. Then, Ning asks Xiaoqi to step forward. Xiaoqi greets immortal master Ning. Quickly, Ning says that he's very talented and calm, so no matter who he joins, his future will certainly be bright. Just observing, Shinshi says he wants to see who will want to take him as a disciple. Then, it's revealed that Xiaoqi has a fire spiritual root. Ning is happy to see that his root is identical to his. Then, the Peak King says that with a fire spiritual root, no one is qualified to compete with the patriarch for that disciple. As he's talking about Xiaoqi's fire root, he is interrupted by another root appearing above Xiaoqi. This time, it's a wood root. Watching from afar, Bai Ren thinks that fire and wood dual spiritual roots, although not as good as a pure fire root, are a great root combination. Then another root appears, this time an earth root. They soon realize that triple spiritual roots are actually common. Quickly, Ning gets upset seeing that Xiaoqi doesn't have only a fire root. Then, two more roots appear in Xiaoqi, making Ning say that those are quintuple spiritual roots, and that he turned out to be trash with no talent for cultivation. He thought Xiaoqi was someone extraordinary, but ended up being a disappointment. He claims the result is truly disappointing, and he doesn't know how he's going to leave the stage after looking so confident earlier. What if his confidence fails? Then, Ning tells Xiaoqi that he has no talent for cultivation, but according to the rules, since he passed the test, the Xiangning Immortal Sect will give him 3 years to pass the final test. He asks if any elder is willing to take Xiaoqi as a disciple. Getting no answer, Ning says what's the point of accepting such trash, who has no talent for cultivation, and says he'll just be a joke inside the sect. Once again, Ning asks if any fellow Taoist is willing to take that disciple. Seeing Ning's expression, Shinshi wonders why he doesn't just say his name. Then, Shin tells Patriarch Ning that someone ordinary like Xiaoqi shouldn't be accepted into their sect, no matter the reason. If he has no cultivation talent, he doesn't need to be an immortal cultivator, Patriarch. In fact, that Xiaoqi doesn't meet the standards they've set, so they can just exclude him. Simple as that, huh? Quickly, Shinshi goes to Xiaoqi and asks his name. After getting an answer, Shinshi asks why that boy is crying, and says that, in time, every boy becomes a man, and tears shouldn't be on a man's face. Quickly, Xiaoqi wipes his tears, and is surprised when Shinshi asks if he accepts becoming his disciple. Repeating several times that he does, Xiaoqi shouts loud enough for everyone around the peak to hear. Thinking that's great, Shinshi says Xiaoqi only needs to believe in one thing: the whole world, sooner or later, will crawl beneath his feet. Kneeling and thanking Shinshi, Xiaoqi says he'll definitely remember that, and asks for permission to bow before him. Shinshi says he's seen enough of that conference, so he calls Xiaoqi to follow him. As they walk, Shinshi knows that's the look he wanted to see, and claims the favorability level is quite full. And starting with SSR characters, especially super rare, usually the highest rarity in games, that completely changed Shinshi's death story. And in the future, he knows he'll be able to live with peace of mind, at least theoretically. Then, Shinshi says that he, the invincible villain master, with his disciples, will have a flower-filled ending. He said the manga's name, Amazing. Arriving at the peak, Shinshi tells Xiaoqi that from today on, he's a disciple of her by peak. Although the talent he showed today isn't good, he believes that one day, he'll prove his strength. Xiaoqi replies to Shinshi saying he won't let him down. While noticing Shinshi and Xiaoqi's conversation, Dong Yueli thinks that the master really likes that young disciple, ignoring the fact that he has no talent. Then, Shinshi shows a bottle to Xiaoqi and says that inside it is a chi-gathering pill. With his current skill, he'll need to take it with water. First, Xiaoqi should divide it into 10 parts, and consume 1 part each time he cultivates. He claims it will help him in the process. Then, Dong Yueli asks what Shinshur is trying to do, and claims that Xiaoqi just started and questions why Shinshur is already trying to give him pills to help him grow. Shinshur says that for some, maybe it's a way to help them grow, but for a pure body like Xiaoqi's, with perfect spiritual affinity, it's not. Then, Dong Yueli says that she, his disciple, spoke recklessly and asked Shinshur to please punish her. He says it's okay, and that she said it out of concern for her junior brother, so he won't punish her. Then Dong asks why Shinshur hasn't been punishing her lately, and questions whether she did something wrong, and he's completely disappointed in her. That's wild, huh? Shinshur asks what Dong means by that, and says naturally, she's been doing a good job. Catching Shinshur's attention, he asks if Xiaoqi still has something he wants to say. Embarrassed, he says that actually she's a girl, and her real name is Xiaoqi, leaving Shinshur totally shocked upon hearing that. Hey guys, are you enjoying it so far? Don't forget to drop a like to support the channel, and leave a comment saying what you think. If there's any story you want to see here, comment the name. I'm always on the lookout to bring good stories. A few days passed, and Shinshur tells Xiaoqi that she's been there for many days now, and asks if she has any questions about cultivation. Sitting on Shin's lap, Xiao says she understands everything. She just can't find a suitable posture when it comes to energy entering the body. Still sitting on Shin's lap, moving back and forth, Shinshur thinks she could very well stop adjusting her posture now. Energy intake shouldn't be done that way. Then Xiao says the master is really amazing, and claims he's not surprised by the fact that she's a girl. Then Xiao asks Shinshur if that means the master saw through her disguise a long time ago, right? Shinshur says that Zhao's clan rejected her, and the journey she went through to get there was full of bandits. And he claims that dressing as a boy was the best choice for a girl, so naturally, he wouldn't expose her real identity. Shinshur wonders what is going on in that story, and why the protagonist, who was a man, became a woman. Where is the protagonist of the story he had created? And what about his harem in the story? Shinshur is outraged and doesn't want to accept that. But looking at Xiao, Shinshur wonders if that is really such a bad thing. And he had become a lowly. The bicycle turned into a motorcycle, which is more comfortable to ride. A very normal transformation to see. Then, Shinshur says that those called cultivators are born with deficiencies, with all 5 elements obstructed. That's because spiritual energy enters the body and interrupts circulation, gradually accumulating until it forms abundance, which allows for transcendence. He explains to Cheer that she has spiritual roots of the 5 elements, so the first step of the body, which would be refining Qi, is something she cannot do, but not to worry, Shinshur will help her solve this. And he says that today, he will teach Cheer the rules that cultivators must know by heart. Inside, Xiener tells her fellow disciples that she has prepared 2 more dishes, both the master's favorites. Dong Yulia says the master will definitely be happy. Seeing that strange attitude from Dong, Xiener wonders what's wrong with her, and claims she's acting weird. Then Ning Tian arrives accompanied by Yuling saying that she just sent a message to the master and claims he should be arriving soon with Xiaoqi. Very hungry, Yuling says that food smells so good, and she realizes that for that meal they're going to have roasted crane. But Ming Tian is confused to see the roasted crane on the table, and asks Xiener if that isn't something the master specifically instructed her to take care of, and questions why Xiener made a meal using them. Then Shinshur arrives with Xiaoqi saying that he's starving after training with Qi all morning. Although Shinshur doesn't need to eat, since he has a body in the Golden Core realm, Xiener's homemade food is excellent, especially that roasted crane. And he hasn't been able to forget the taste since the last time he ate crane. An unforgettable taste. In a mood swing, Shinshur suddenly questions why his precious cranes are roasted. And they're both females. Xiaoqi asks Ming Tian if the master can even tell the gender of roasted cranes. She tells Xiao to be quiet and says Shinshur is getting angry, so Xiao shouldn't say anything. Shinshur says he fed those medicinal cranes with his precious edelweiss, and he was waiting for them to mate so he could sell the eggs and get rich. Furious, he asks who fried that crane. Then all his disciples kneel before their master. After calming down, Shinshur asks them all to stand and tells them not to be scared, and asks once again, who did it? Shinshur knows that the medicinal crane is supposedly something external, far less important than those lovely disciples. He knows he lost control for a moment, and was affected by the violent personality originally of that body. Then Dong Yueli admits it was she who allowed Xiener to say that, and it was also her who took the cranes. So, she asks Shinshur to please give her some kind of punishment. Quickly, she kneels and pleads for Shinshur to make sure to punish her severely. This is getting way too weird now. Finding that atmosphere totally strange, Shinshur thinks that although things are weird, it would be even weirder not to punish her. The problem is how. Then Xiaoqi asks her master if her disciple's sister will get a spanking for making such a mistake. Shinshur agrees and realizes that's a great idea. Giving Dong Yueli a spanking right in front of her fellow disciples will make her lose a lot of respect. He knows that from now on, he has to be a quiet and practical man, but also not too violent so that his image won't be ruined. Angrily, Shinshur calls Dong to come to him. Once she's there, he asks Dong Yueli to lie on his lap. Looking at Dong Yueli's body, Shinshur thinks her body is really different from Cheer's lowly body. Shinshur knows he needs to stay calm in that moment, and that he can't lose control. Otherwise, his image as a master will be destroyed. An image is kinda important here, you know. While spanking Dong Yueli, Shinshur says that she failed in being an example, so she will be appropriately punished today, and tells the others watching that this should be taken as a warning. While being spanked, Dong Yueli tells her master she was wrong, and begs him to please use more force when hitting her, and to punish her cruelly in front of her fellow disciples. After getting tired of spanking Dong Yueli, he understands that in his story, Dong Yueli is a masochist. And in the story, she was abused but didn't abandon Shinshur. Back then, he didn't consider the reason behind that. So, are the heavens helping him complete the logic? But the way this is happening, leaving Dong Yueli and the other disciples behind, Shinshur says he's not going to eat anymore, and says they can split the roasted crane among themselves. Worried about Dong, her fellow disciples ask if she's okay. Dong says she's fine and calls Ming Tian to come closer. Then Dong Yueli asks Ming to go fetch a new set of underwear for her. Without hesitation, Ming runs off to get new clothes for Dong. Yuling asks what's wrong with Ming. Xian'er says she doesn't know. Looking at Dong Yueli, Xiaoqi understands what happened there and chuckles discreetly. So it's not too obvious. While taking his bath, Shinshur says that in these past few days, Dong Yueli is restraining herself more in front of her fellow disciples, more or less taking care of her image. Shinshur knows that when she's alone with him, she's getting very. Suddenly, he's surprised by Dong Yueli entering his room asking if Shinshur had called her. Shinshur says he's already told Dong many times that he doesn't need help in the bath. Dong Yueli tells her master that it must have been tough for him to teach her and her fellow disciples every day, and she says she's going to help him scrub his back. Going up to Shinshur and trying to get in the tub, he tells Dong not to just barge into the tub like that. There should be at least a little ceremony, right? Then he repeats to Dong Yueli that he doesn't need her help. So Shinshur tells Dong to leave immediately. Ignoring Shin's orders, Dong says she's not going to do anything he's telling her and enters the tub, and then asks Shin if she shouldn't be punished for being so disobedient. Looking at Dong, startled, Shinshur thinks that world is truly crazy, and questions how he could have a disciple like that, and wonders who could resist something like that. He thinks that if he had written his novel like that before, wouldn't he have gotten more views? Then, they're surprised by Xiaoqi at the door calling Shinshur and saying that she has a question she doesn't understand, so she's there to ask for advice. Not knowing what to do, Dong asks her master what she should do now. He questions Dong why she hadn't thought about the consequences. Then he tells her to hide in the wardrobe. Getting out of the tub, Dong says she's going to hide now, but begs Shinshur not to say she was there. Leaving water all over the floor and getting into the wardrobe soaking wet, Shin uses a kind of magic to remove the water from the floor and from Dong's body, otherwise, she's going to catch a cold, which is a terrible thing to catch. Upon entering, Xiaoqi finds only her master, seemingly disappointed not to find anyone else there. Soon, Shin tells Cheer that it's already quite late and asks what he can do for her. Trying to disguise it, Xiao claims that her master was taking a bath, and quickly says that she didn't understand some questions, so she's there to ask Shin for some advice. Asking to hear her doubts, Shin says that actually, Xiao still can't refine QI, so she doesn't have to work so hard to learn the theory. Looking at the wardrobe, knowing what's going on, Xiao says she understood what her master said. Sensing something strange, Shin wonders why Xiao keeps looking at the wardrobe. Xiaoqi says that her talent is naturally quite poor, so she has to give her best. She initially wanted to ask her senior sister disciple, but couldn't find her anywhere. Soon, Shin asks Xiao what exactly she doesn't understand. Before answering Shin, Xiao says she will serve him a cup of tea first. Inside that tight and hot wardrobe, Dong realizes that she is covered in her master's scent. While smelling some of Shinshir's clothes, Dong knows Xiao is still there, and she knows she can't be discovered by her. As her master's scent begins to engulf her, she claims that she's getting aroused by his smell. Moving around a lot in the wardrobe, Shinshir notices there's some strange movement coming from there, and wonders what Dong Yueli is doing. Quickly, Xiao Qi'er tells her master that the tea is ready. Purposely tripping, Qi'er knows that if Master Shinshir's clothes get wet, she'll be able to get new clothes for him in the wardrobe and discover Dong Yueli, right? Quickly, Shin catches Xiao and doesn't get wet as she thought he would. At least there was that good side. Then Shin asks Xiao to be more careful where she walks. Hugging Shin, Xiao says she's very clumsy. And fortunately, she didn't wet her master's clothes. And she doesn't know if there would be any appropriate clothes for him to change into in the wardrobe. Shin says it's alright, and asks her to be more careful in the future. He also says that it wouldn't be a problem if his clothes got wet, but if Qi'er fell, she would surely get hurt. Quickly, Shinshir realizes that Gao's tricks are on purpose. Running her hand on Shinshir's chest, Xiao says she will obey her master's orders. Shinshir claims that Xiao is still young and probably can't understand things now, probably. After a good while, Xiao Qi'er says she's leaving. After she's gone, Shinshir claims that the little one kept talking nonsense for an hour. Even though Shinshir is someone in the Golden Core realm, he almost collapsed because of Xiao. Shinshir knows it was very hard to deal with Qi'er, while also paying attention to Dong Yueli. Shin hopes she's okay after being locked in the wardrobe for so long. After opening the wardrobe and finding Dong Yueli wearing one of his robes, Shin asks if it was hard to stay locked in the wardrobe like that. And he says that next time she does this, it won't be the wardrobe she'll be locked in a slightly threatening tone. Crawling out of the wardrobe, Dong Yueli asks her master if he has any more punishments and says she'll accept them. Whether whipping, pouring wax, or burning, as long as it's done by Master Shinshir, Dong Yueli will accept. Ignoring everything Dong said, Shin tells her to change clothes now, and not to leave a bad impression on her fellow sisters. Drinking the leftover tea Xiao Qi'er made, Shin admits that place is far too dangerous. If he stays there, he certainly won't survive the trial. Soon, Shin tells Dong that he will be leading the peak for a while. Then he asks her to go and prepare a few things for him. He explains that all his disciples will stay on the peak and will cultivate properly. And he asks them to prepare for the sex trial that will happen in the middle of the year. Curious, Dong Yueli asks Shin why he suddenly wants to descend the peak. Quickly, Shin replies that he's going to look for something. He knows his Edelweiss are almost all being eaten by those cranes. So he'd better hurry and grab the protagonist's hacks before something else changes. What if it ends badly? On the second day outside the Shangning Immortal sect, Shinshir, while walking, says that ever since he arrived in that world, this is the first time he's left the sect. But anyway, the destination isn't very far, so he knows he should walk a bit. While on the road, Gao tells the madam there's a stream ahead, and asks if they should stop to rest. The madam tells Gao to let everyone rest by the roadside. She says they've been traveling non-stop for 3 days, and everyone must be quite tired. After stopping to rest, the men smell something very good coming from a direction. And they wonder what that delicious smell is, and where it's coming from. Soon, they find Shinshir preparing cumin lamb kebabs. Shinshir quickly says that it's the best thing. And he says that going down the ravine to look for cumin seeds wasn't in vain. Now Shinshir just has to do one thing. Now there's only one mission. As they claim it's cumin lamb kebab, the man in the carriage asks them to wait. And he soon says he's sure that the man preparing the skewers is not a cultivator. Then, that gentleman calls Commander Gao and gives him a type of yellow flower. Looking at those men, Shinshir knows that among the group, there's one in the Foundation realm, but his spiritual energy movement is a mess and is getting depleted, so he's not a threat. Approaching Shinshir, Gao Sheng introduces himself and says he's the commander of the guards of the Muling Palace. Quickly, Shinshir asks what he can do for Gao Sheng. Praising Shin, Gao Sheng says his culinary skills are splendid, so he'd like to buy some of those skewers. And he offers a gold leaf for 3 of them, and asks what Shinshir thinks of that offer. Shin replies to Gao saying he must be joking, and claims that 3 lamb skewers for a gold leaf is too much. Then he says he can't eat that much meat alone, so Gao is free to take as much as he wants. Thanking Shinshir for his generosity, Gao Sheng says that his brothers will be able to ease their hunger. As night approaches, Shinshir stands up and says it's time to move on. Soon, 2 women approach Shin, which makes him wonder if the two are sisters or mother and daughter. Then, he asks the woman who she's calling Little One. Said the gnome wannabe. Soon, the woman tells Shin that his lamb skewers were extremely tasty, and claims that their meeting like this must be fate. Quickly, she tells Shin that her name is Luo Sasha, from the Moonling Palace. And she says that the other young woman is her daughter Ying. And she asks if she may know Shin's name. He tells Sasha that cultivators don't reveal their real names, and says his Taoist name is Jingza. Embarrassed, Sasha asks if he's really a cultivator, and apologizes to Shin for being so rude. Sasha knows that a cultivator's Taoist name is ranked according to age, and she's never heard of a generation with Jing, so Shin sure must have made it up. And she claims Shin is quite cautious. Already asking, Sasha asks Shin if she can ask whether that young cultivator is going somewhere. Ignoring Sasha, he says that right now, he's saying goodbye. While Ying laughs at her mother, Shin looks back and says he's going to Duanli Mountain. And he asks Sasha if he's on their route, then why don't they give him a ride? Soon, she replies to Shin saying that if he doesn't mind. Good manners, right? That night, inside their tent, Yuling asks her mother why she allowed Shinshur to travel with them. She questions whether the elder hadn't said he wasn't a cultivator. Sasha replies that although the young man is a bit strange, she can't see through him. And she says that whether he's a cultivator or not, he must be an extraordinary person, and that there's no danger in taking him along. Besides, Shinshur also said he's heading to Duanli Mountain, which is a demonic mountain. And it's said that demonic beasts occupy that place. Sasha tells her daughter that no one who's gone to that mountain has ever returned alive. And she asks, if she wasn't skilled, why would she dare to go there? Frightened, Yuling hugs her mother and says that if Shinshur really is a specialist and they befriend him, then she won't have to join the Yuhua sect, right? She says she doesn't want to be separated from her mother. Calling Yuling a silly girl, Sasha says she doesn't want to be separated from her either, but asks Yuling, can one really have everything they want? Yuling then says that if Shinshur is really good, she'll marry him. That way, the Moonling Palace won't be bullied anymore. Outside, after sneezing, Shinshur is surprised by Gao Sheng, who tells him there are no good places to rest out there. Gao invites him to sleep in his tent to avoid catching a cold. He then says he'll take the night watch while everyone else sleeps. Shinshur tells Gao there's no need, and says he doesn't sleep. He then asks why they're heading to Yuhua Mountain. Gao Sheng explains that Moonling Palace was once considered one of the great sects of Jianchu, and immortals bowed before them. Even the imperial court of the Jade Kingdom showed them respect. But after their ancestor died, the sect instantly lost its greatest protection. That ruined everything. Gao explains that over the years, Madame Sasha has supported the entire Moonling Palace alone. And he says that if it weren't for her wisdom, he fears the palace would have been devoured by hostile forces. Answering Shin's question, Gao Sheng says they're heading to Yuhua Mountain because they heard there's a great immortal sect there, and Madame Sasha wants young Lady Yuling to join it. Shinshur asks if it's the Yuhua sect. And what about the palace master? Gao Sheng says the palace master died young. At that time, Madame Sasha hadn't even arrived yet. They never even met, and were forever separated from each other. Young Lady Yuling is a child Madame Sasha adopted, a fact well known in Jianchu. Putting his hand to his forehead, Shinshur realizes they are a pair of beautiful mother and daughter who had to carry the burden of their family business, and both are untouched virgins. Even if he doesn't want to attract wolves, they'll still come for them. He quickly realizes he's gotten himself into big trouble. Really big. Then, Shinshur tells Gao Sheng to wake everyone up immediately. They're going to have to fight. Confused, Gao asks what he just said. Shin explains that 300 steps away, there are many enemies, and some of them are cultivators. Gao quickly calls everyone and tells them to be on alert. He tells everyone to get ready for combat. Knowing that this is fate, Shinshur decides to help them a little. Seeing that those men are about to attack their group, Sasha tells everyone not to panic. She says that for the enemy to choose an ambush means they lack the confidence to fight them head-on. Then, Sasha calls Shinshur to follow them, and also tells Yuling not to be afraid. In a moment like that, Shin wonders how Sasha still wants to protect someone she just met by chance. But he quickly changes that thought and claims that since they met by fate, he'll protect them both. And since there are cultivators among the people attacking them, whether the mortals win or not isn't important. What Shin needs to know is when the enemy will strike. To try to be ready. After the cultivators begin attacking the group, Elder Bai realizes Shinshur is just a lost cultivator. Quickly, but uses a sword technique that cuts down all the arrows flying toward him and the group. Sasha immediately thanks Elder Bai for his help. Soon after, another rain of arrows is fired at the Elder, but he easily defends himself by creating a kind of barrier around him. Then, he counterattacks and easily finishes off the men on the front lines. Watching the fight from above, one of the cultivators riding a sword says, and here he was thinking Bai was someone, since he had been talking so big. But he's just a humble strengthener in the foundation building realm. Looking at the man, Elder Bai asks who he is. Quickly, the man responds that it doesn't matter who he is. And he says Bai is a hired cultivator, so there's no need for him to risk his life to complete a mission. As long as Bai does nothing else, the man will spare his life. With this simple condition. Down below, Lei Kai finds Sasha and says it's been a long time since they last met. He then says Sasha is truly becoming more and more attractive. Knowing it was Lei Kai, Sasha says that he set up such a big scene. She asks if it's just to seize the property of Muling Palace, right? Lei Kai replies that it's both yes and no. In addition to the palace's property, Lei Kai also wants Sasha for himself. He says that when Sasha arrogantly rejected him before, did she ever think this day would come? Looking at Bai for help, Sasha realizes Bai has withdrawn from the fight, and he thinks he's no match for them. Seeing all that, Shinshir knows he can't stay on the sidelines any longer. As Shin is about to make a move, Sasha asks him to stay put. She then tells Lei Kai that whether it's Muling Palace or herself, she, Luo Shanshan, will yield. But with one condition. She asks Lei Kai to let her daughter and that cultivator go. Then Lei Kai says that people say the eldest lady of Muling Palace has eyes like spring water and lips like peach blossoms. He says she's like an immortal banished to the mortal world. And how could he let such beauty go after seeing the rumors were true? Watching that, Bai says Lei Kai has to work for others just to make money. Anyway, time is running out, so he tries to help Sasha, her daughter, and Shin one last time. Quickly, Elder Bai throws a sword toward Lei Kai. But the man on the flying sword uses a spell from afar to bind Elder Bai. Even while bound, the sword continues flying toward Lei Kai. Lei screams for help from the other man, who quickly casts a spell that creates a massive wall, stopping the sword and saving Lei Kai's life. Realizing he was nearly killed by that sword, Lei Kai says he'll teach Elder Bai a lesson today. Taking advantage of the enemy's distraction, Sasha calls Shin and tries to hand him a seal. But he grabs Sasha's hand and asks her to keep the seal, saying that he is here. Coming up behind Sasha, Shin says that actually, he's not as young as she thinks he is. That makes Yuling and Sasha even more curious about his words. Seeing Shin close to the girls, Lei Kai asks where that brat came from. Even I'm not sure. Tired of all that nonsense, Shinshir releases a massive purple aura that commands respect from his enemies. Trembling with fear, the man on the sword says he's never seen that kind of cultivation before and wonders what type it is. He quickly realizes that neither he nor his master can compare to that person's cultivation. And so, he begs Shinshir to spare him. Looking at Shin, Yuling says that she has seen so many dangers and schemes since she was a child, but she has never felt as at ease as she does now. And she realizes that Shinshir is truly a cultivation expert. In Shin's arms, Sasha claims that she has been carrying so much burden, but now, it should be right to rely on Master Shin. At least this time. Right after seeing a bit of Shin's cultivation, the elder Sasha and her daughter thank him for his help. Soon, Shin says that even if he were to say again that he's not young, calling him, Sir, is too much. Sasha then thanks Shin again, calling him young master. Kneeling after witnessing Shin's cultivation, the man who is on the sword begs Shinshir to please spare his life. Then he says that his name is Fong Daiquan, and his master is Fong Dingshan, an outer elder of the Di Qing sect. When that junior returns to his sect, he will definitely hand over his treasures. That guy and he have nothing to do with each other, so, once again, begging politely, the man asks Shin to spare his life. You know, begging nicely. Furious, Lei Kai says to the man that he received the green lotus seed that collects his family's spirit, so how could he abandon him like that? Calling Lei Kai a bastard, the man asks when he ever received any green lotus seed for spirit collection. Then he launches a sword-shaped spell to kill Lei Kai, but he is quickly interrupted by Shinshir, who breaks the sword in two. Immediately, pointing a sword at the man, Shin asks if he had said that he could move. Terrified, the man asks Shin to calm down a bit. After seeing that sword, he wonders what kind of sword that is. He claims that it was just one strike and his sword was broken in two. Shin knows that the jade bamboo sword is his signature sword, so he can't show it. And that sword, Blue Lake, deserves to be called his hidden trump card. Even though it's only profound grade, in that beginner's map where there aren't many spiritual grade treasures, it can be used for everything. Shin thinks that back then, if the group in the novel hadn't gone out to block Shao-Chi's sword, Shin would have killed him easily. But how unexpected, right? That a boss like him is now wandering around, claiming that everyone should fear him. That man says to Shin that he didn't take any green lotus spirit collecting seed from Lei Kai. He claims that Lei Kai just wanted to stir up trouble. Enjoying playing the villain a little, Shin says they have 20 breaths. Whoever gives him the spirit will collect the green lotus seed first and be spared. Whoever's faster gets the prize. Quickly, the man tries to attack Lei Kai, but is surprised by a rain of arrows to the chest. Soon, Lei Kai kneels before Shin and says that he found it. But Shin says there are still 5 breaths left, and Lei Kai is surprised by the man who stabs a sword through his heart from behind. Then he calls Lei Kai naive, and asks if he thinks that the Qi refining stage and the foundation establishment stage are the same. Finding that amusing, as promised, Shin says he won't kill the man. Thanking Shin for not killing him, Elder Bai finishes the job by wrapping that kind of yellow rope around the man's neck, killing him instantly. Quick and clean. Sasha tells Shin at this time the line was crossed, and asks him to please forgive her. Shin replies to Sasha saying that it doesn't matter. He only said he wouldn't kill him, and dying at Sasha's hands has nothing to do with him. He says that since he's helping Sasha, naturally he won't get upset over such small things. Soon, Elder Bai hands the rope to Shin, and says that it's the treasure of that cultivator in the foundation establishment stage. Then, Shin realizes it's a ground-linking lock of the highest spiritual quality. Shin says he removed the prohibitions and divine thoughts from it, then asks Bai to store it for him and use it carefully to avoid death. Elder Bai says that it's of the highest spiritual grade, very valuable, and he cannot accept it. Turning his back to the elder, Shin says that's enough. He claims he doesn't like that kind of thing. Since he helped him through that crisis, he has fulfilled that fate. He says he still has things to do, so he's leaving immediately. Leaving with a sense of joy, Shin says that this is the true feeling. And he says his aura is like that of a sage, and one of the best experts in the world. What a compliment. Soon, Yuling asks Shin to wait a moment, and asks if he is still heading to Duanli Mountain. And if he doesn't mind, how about joining them in the carriage and traveling together? Then, Sasha says they haven't truly thanked Shin yet, and asks for them to go slowly to check the details inside the carriage. Inside the carriage, while traveling, Sasha and Yuling feed Shin. Then, he says he heard that Sasha was planning to send Yuling to the Yuhua sect to become a disciple. Sasha replies to Shin saying yes, and says that Elder Bai had said Yuling has good cultivation talent, so while she is still young, she can try to seize the opportunity. Then, Yuling tells her mother that she'll soon be 14, and now she's a big girl, and ordinary girls start getting married at her age. Finding that tempting, Shin repeats to himself twice that he is no longer young, just to avoid temptation. Then Shin says that Elder Bai is just a casual cultivator, so he only knows one thing, and not the other. So Shin says that even if the Yuhua sect is a sect dominated by female cultivators, and sending Yuling there may seem safer, what they actually practice is the dual cultivation method. Then, Yuling asks Shin what dual cultivation is, just to satisfy her curiosity. Shin says it's not suitable for children, so he'll explain next time he sees her. But he asks Yuling to let him examine her aptitude first. After touching Yuling's forehead, she feels something approaching and making her body very hot, but also very comfortable. While melting on Shin's lap, Yuling tries to call out to him, but is quickly interrupted by him asking her not to move, as it will be over soon. After it's done, Shin realizes that Yuling has a rare empty spiritual root constitution. Knowing Yuling's rare empty spiritual root constitution, Shin knows that if people say having 5 spiritual roots makes one mortal, then the empty spiritual root is the constitution of an immortal, someone naturally born with the potential to ascend. The energy of heaven and earth can be stored easily, and there are no bottlenecks. However, the empty spiritual root has no attributes, so naturally it cannot channel the spiritual power of any element. Even if she cultivates, she can only use spiritual power to strengthen her body and health. Shin knows that in the cultivation world, people with that kind of constitution only have one fate: becoming a battery and an excellent dual cultivation body. Countless superior immortal sects will covet the empty spiritual root and use it to ascend to a higher realm. He knows that this is something that will drive people insane. And insane is an understatement. Then Yuding asked Shinshur how she did. Quickly, Shin replies saying that Yuding has great talent, and asks if she would like to become his disciple. Without hesitation, Yuding accepts Shin's invitation. Then, he says that since she is now his disciple, she should listen carefully to what he will say next. First, Shin will teach Yuding how to cultivate, but she absolutely must not reveal her identity as a cultivator. And she also cannot reveal her cultivation to strangers. Second, he will not teach her constantly. She will need to learn on her own many times, but Shin will help her set her cultivation reference points. And third, no matter what problem she encounters, she can call Shin at any time. And he will give her a messenger stone, and she can contact him by activating it. And he will help her as fast as possible. And he asks if Yuding understood everything he just said. Quickly, Yuding says she understood everything perfectly. Perfectly, maybe even too perfectly. While patting Yuding's head, Shin claims that having a normal and awesome disciple like Yuding is a very good thing. Unlike the rest of his disciples at home. Soon, Shin tells Sasha that Yuding's constitution is special. And if she reveals it on impulse, she might bring death upon her family. So he asks Sasha to remember, Yuding must not show any of her cultivation. Frightened, Sasha says that this is really dangerous. Then, Shin tells Sasha not to worry because he will take care of everything. And he will help her with another insurance. Going to Elder Bai, Shinshur says he would like to know what guidance he can offer him. Then, he explains that Bai's cultivation technique is incomplete, therefore it consumes his life. He says that although foundation building cultivators can live up to 200 years, he fears Bai's time is running out now. And he proposes a deal to Elder Bai Jishui. Quickly, Shin shows a Yuanling pill. And says that besides the spiritual energy and vitality contained in it, it should be able to extend his life by up to 10 years if he takes it for the first time. Then Shin says he will help him complete his technique. And says that if Bai spends 10 years cultivating hard, it's possible to reach the final stage of foundation building. And that way, he can live another 100 years. Another century for the collection. Kneeling to Shin, Elder Bai says that what Shin has given him is equivalent to giving him a new life. No matter what Shinshur asks, Bai will not refuse under any circumstances and will take on the matter without fear. Then, Shin says that for 10 years, Bai shall become an existence that protects Muling Castle, and when Muling Castle needs him, Bai must do everything to help. Then Bai agrees with Shinshur. In another room, Sasha tells Yuding that she's lucky to have become the disciple of young Master Shinshur, and she won't have to send her to the Yuhua sect, nor will Sasha be separated from Yuding anymore. Then Sasha says that Yuding should listen to her master in the future. Questioning her mother, Yuding asks if she hadn't told her that story before. That immortals are open and don't follow worldly etiquettes. And a master and a disciple can become a cultivation couple. Siblings can also become a cultivation couple. Shocked, Sasha asks what Yuding means with those thoughts. Then, Yuding and Sasha are startled by Shinshur's presence in that room and ask when he came back. Sasha says that young Master Shin is truly extraordinary. Can come and go without leaving any trace. Standing there thinking, Shin wonders why it seems like he's building a harem when he accepts disciples. Then, Shin says that Elder Bai Jishui agreed to protect Muling Castle, and says that with him, there won't be many who can threaten Muling Castle. Knowing that Bai is a cultivator in the foundation building realm, asking him to descend the mountain took a lot of effort from Shin. But now, Elder Bai easily agreed to become his protector. Sasha wonders just how strong the young master really is. If only she knew. Shin says there's no need to go to the Yuhua sect anymore, so they should return now. And he says that he will make a trip to Muling Castle personally later. After being called by Yuding, Shin says there's no need to stare at him, and says that's not his real face. But he will let Yuding and Sasha take a look before he goes. Revealing his true identity, Shin tells Yuding that the technique has already been passed on to her, so remember to cultivate well. Then, he says he'll look for her soon. Returning to his disguise, and leaving the carriage immediately, Shin knows he has lost too much time, and that he needs to hurry now. And claims that he must do what he needs to do in 2 days. Arriving at Duanli Mountain, Shin knows that it's a sinister mountain. There are no human dwellings for 100 miles, and many kinds of snakes and animals live in the forest. Moreover, the mountain is home to the poisonous Qinlin toad, which has strength equivalent to the nascent soul stage. All the 5-element fruits from a 5-element tree can improve a cultivator's spiritual root quality. And demon beasts at the nascent soul stage can be reborn in human form with the help of the 5-element fruit. Looking at that green toad, Shin thinks that poisonous Qinlin toad must be guarding the fruit and waiting for it to ripen. The classic coffin guarding strategy. With little interest in the fruit, he's mainly there because of the 5-element stone buried beneath the tree. The 5-element stone can balance the 5 elements and store the spiritual power of the 5 elements, which is the foundation for Shaoqier to cultivate. Although it's not hard to kill a demon beast in the nascent soul stage, it's better to do one thing less than one thing more. Shinshir claims he will only take the stone after that demon beast leaves. After 2 days pass, Shinshir realizes that the poisonous toad eats, sleeps, eats, and stays in the same spot. And even if he waits longer, it probably won't take a single step. And he wonders what to do now. Should he just forcefully kill that demon beast? Then, he knows that killing by force is definitely not the right solution, and claims that this is a matter of his dignity, a matter of honor. Shinshir soon remembers that his specialty is traps and illusions, and he can simply use illusion arts to try to trick the beast. He claims that the poisonous toad is so lazy it must have tastes similar to his. Then, Shinshir casts a spell and creates a pink toad and tries to approach that demon beast. Quickly, that poisonous toad falls into Shinshir's trap and starts following that other pink female toad. While moving toward that tree, Shin claims that the poisonous toad is truly a fellow believer. He follows his instincts properly, and it looks like his plan to use poison and laxatives won't need to be used anymore. After managing to reach the tree, Shinshir says he hopes that Toad doesn't finish too quickly. While trying to remove the tree from its place in search of the treasure, Shin is surprised by that poisonous toad returning to the tree, calling Shin a damn human, claiming that Shin must die. While pulling his blue lake sword, Shin asks that toad why it's cursing him. Then, Shin uses his stepping wave skill against that poisonous toad. Then the toad says to Shin that he is merely at the golden core stage. When the poisonous toad tries to ask Shin if he doesn't know his place, Shin quickly attacks that toad, making it retreat immediately. A reaction already expected. From afar, that toad claims that this is impossible, and wonders if human cultivators are this strong now. Repeatedly using the stepping wave technique, that poisonous toad wonders who the hell is that young man who ruined his chance. Screaming and yelling 10 miles away, he's afraid that his ambush has succeeded or what. Seeing that immense power in the sky, that poisonous toad claims that with such a strong pressure, if that golden core stage cultivator is already this strong, then that nascent soul stage attack will flatten that toad along with the mountain. Claiming that it doesn't matter, that toad says if he's going to die, then he'll die with dignity. Soon, he uses a power ability against that fire lotus that was in the sky. Seeing that the attack was wiped out along with the one from that poisonous toad, Shinshir wonders how that ultimate move with so much spiritual pressure simply disappeared like that. It disappeared faster than it appeared. Then, Yu Wuxuang appears in the skies, telling that poisonous toad that, for him to be able to break her Samadhi fire lotus, he must have demonic beast abilities. Then, she says that this won't stop her from taking the 5 elements fruit today. Looking from below, Shin knows that woman is Yu Wuxuang, the genius of the Taiyan immortal sect, and also the daughter of the sect leader. In the river, that poisonous toad says that human cultivators are not the same anymore, and claims that he seems to have been mistaken just now. Then, he attacks Yu Wuxuang, who quickly retaliates using her ability. Scorching Phoenix Cry. Yu swiftly dodges the toad's attacks. Then, he asks Yu if she is afraid now, and how she dares to try to steal his treasure. Then Yu Wuxuang questions why she would use the fire phoenix to deal with that toad when she can do it simply by herself. Then, Shinshir wonders why she wasted energy summoning the phoenix. Was it just for show? The poisonous toad unleashes several attacks against Yu, but as she dodges all of them, she gets distracted, and one of the toad's strikes almost touches her clothes. Seeing that Yu fell into his trap, the toad claims that she's a very stupid human. Realizing she's fallen into a trap, Yu questions how the toad dares to use poison, calling him despicable. Then, the toad says that if anyone is poisoned by his Qinglin poison, even if that person is a god transformation cultivator, their power will be greatly reduced for a certain period of time. Just a mild condition, you know. Then, the toad lashes Yu Wuxuang with his tongue and pulls her toward him. The toad says to Yu that he wonders what the taste of a natural soul cultivator would be. Quickly, Shinshir uses his ability, Stepping Wave, against that toad again, saving Yu Wuxuang from his hunger. Then, the toad says he is no longer afraid of Shin, and that he was just careless a moment ago. Furious, the toad calls Shin a bastard and asks how he dared to ambush him, and asks where Shin's martial values are. Quickly, that poisonous toad uses his Qinglin poisonous gas explosion on Shinshir, but he quickly uses his Stepping Wave again and cuts off the toad's ability. Furious, he asks Shin if that's the only move he's got. Shinshir replies to that beast saying no, but that was his true Stepping Wave. Lying down and watching that dialogue, Wu is impressed by Shinshir's words. And that was today's story. If you enjoyed it, leave a like to support, subscribe to the channel, and activate the bell so you don't miss future videos. Don't forget to comment what you thought and what story you want to see here. I'm always responding to the comments, and I'll be bringing the best stories you send right here. See you in the next videos.